Good morning and welcome to another AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, episode 21 with 9 years experience, as some people would say. No, Matthew, no.
It's never worked. That's never worked for me either, Richard. I'm sorry.
And your internet's looking a little bit dodgy there this morning, Graham.
Oh, really? Is it? Okay.
Yeah. You're
Did
like
we pay
on the
the bill?
Wi-Fi or off the Wi-Fi or something like that today?
Yeah, you look like you're made out of Lego or
okay.
Minecraft or something.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll roll with it.
I'm looking just fabulous myself and my own friend. So,
yeah, marginal
okay,
where you
right.
are. Not
We're
sure
just
if you've
going to
done
pay our
anything.
internet bill. That's all.
Yeah, okay. No worries at all. Right, well, let's get into the day, though I gather you have a very quick story you want to tell first to get about a vehicle purchase, Graham.
I do, and it's a major purchase. But if you're in the automotive industry, you'll have a bit of a giggle. You know, I like Hot Wheels, right? And so does this guy down here as well, Mr. Hanson. But we're all grown men. The biggest market for collectible Hot Wheels in New Zealand would be men like us in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and that sort of stuff. So the hot ticket.
You're both at two extremes of that schedule.
I know. But if you can check this out, so this is an American company that's released a Monaro. So this is a 1973 Monaro GTS. It's just been released as a collectible item, and the feeding friends in New Zealand, two grown men had a fight in the warehouse in Henderson 2-3 nights ago over one of those. That's how bad this is how popular this sort of stuff is. Two grown men literally had a fight in the middle of the aisle over a collectible Monaro. How bad's that?
Well, I imagine there's a few fights at the warehouse in Henderson.
I know, but we're all car guys, right? So we've got car guys from the planet that are circling around this thing because it's just the first time an Australian icon like this. And arguably, you say every Holden, Red, Blanky and Thermos owner around the world is congregating on this sort of stuff to add to their collection. It's so unusual for diecast to be produced en masse around the world. So the Holden thing still lives. It's still alive. It's got people around the world in a feeding frenzy over this thing. So there we go. But yeah, men fighting in the warehouse with the Hot Wheels.
The Monaro is a really interesting car brand, really, in that, you know, like I was around when the new generation Monaro was launched, which is one of the rare relaunches of a car where they get something moderately right. You know, it was sure, it was just a Commodore Coupe, but it was a cool car. And as a young motoring journalist, I was like 22, 23 when they got launched. I did what any young man would do when he got a Monaro to test and took it out to Queen Street at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. And it was the first car ever that I'd driven up Queen Street, and I had guys getting down on their knees and bowing down to the car. And that was rather fun. Yes.
Were you throwing Holden bar towels and thermos flasks and buttons out the window as you went?
Nope. No. Matthew, how was your wee trip to Melbourne last week?
Yes, they were really fun.
Oh, it was really good. Obviously, I wasn't here last week. I assume the audience ratings for this skyrocketed as a result.
It was actually a really good week for live viewing.
So I drove the EQB. Conveniently, I've got one in the driveway at the moment as well. We can touch on that later. We can touch on that now. What do you think, Richard?
No, we're not going to touch it. We did that in the EVs and Beyond stream. If people want to hear more about that, they should go over to the EVs and Beyond YouTube channel and watch the EVs and Beyond live stream. Did you have
pricing and all the embargo stuff?
Yeah, true. Yeah. We covered the pricing on the stream because the pricing was released in September. That wasn't embargoed.
Okay. Right, impressions, that sort of thing. Anyway, we can continue.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting vehicle to launch because, you know, there's always complaining about there being no 7-seat electric vehicles. Well, there you go, 7-seat electric vehicle, 99,900, I think, for the entry level, which is actually not that much for a Mercedes-Benz 7-seater, even though it's pretty small. Drives okay, Matthew?
The 7-seater doesn't come at that base price. To add another couple of seats is a few more grand on top.
Oh,
and
okay.
Can you ask how much a 7-seater might be?
Pardon?
Or is that embargoed? How much is a 7-seater?
I think it's an extra 4K. And
So $104,000.
I think
which makes it okay.
Makes it 103. But what makes it interesting is that the volume seller of that model is expected to be the 350 with the dual motors, a lot faster. That one is exclusively 5-seater, and it's only 10 grand more than the base car. So it's kind of an interesting thing where the 7-seat factor is locked out of the model that I think most people who are looking at that model will actually want to buy. But yeah, I think it's curious.
And if you get to 130, you can get the 8-seat Vito people movery version. Who knows? More options coming. Still cool to see more. Every time I see an EV land, I'm always happy. Right. Anyway, let's talk about something else that makes me happy and also makes me nervous at the same time.
Which is perfect for the runners and campers for dance lessons. But it's not.
We can't hear you, Graham. Are you sure you're on the Wi-Fi or something today? Do you need to go stand outside and get a better signal? Can you hear us?
This is going good.
Yeah. Graham, your connection is terrible.
I've lost you guys.
Yeah. Do you want to exit and come back in and we'll kick on with the show?
No, my internet has died. We're going to put some more coins in the meter.
Cool.
I'll just go and put some more coins in the meter.
Okay, we'll carry on without you.
Going to go and borrow 50 cents from someone to put some coins into the meter.
Just switch from Wi-Fi to mobile or something like that.
Okay. Anyway, I'm actually going to dive out of the show and then rehook back in again.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Can you
catch up
now?
Yep. You go.
Yep. I'll exit.
I'll bring you back in.
You guys just talk amongst yourselves and I'll come back.
Yep. No worries. Never a dull moment. Right. Because he's going, we're going to go through some. He's not leaving. I'm going to kick him from the studio. That'll work. There we go. Now, I'm going to leave the first story till a little bit later then because he's not back yet. We'll start with number 2. So, an automotive recruiter says immigration settings will become more problematic. Automotive Employment New Zealand Director Russell Phillips has responded to comments made by Immigration, Workplace Relations and Safety and Transport Minister Michael Wood to the Motor Direct Trade Association conference on October 14. But this could be excused for being led to believe immigration settings just got a whole lot easier. And while this may be true for diesel mechanics and auto electricians, which have been added to the green list, it is not the same for most other categories, Phillips says. What the minister fails to mention is that automotive technicians, the main category of shortages in the motor industry present, have specifically been excluded from inclusion on the green list. Michael Wood spoke at the MTA conference last week. He said, we're opening all this up. We're putting these people on the list. It's going to be great. But then didn't actually put technicians on the list. So that's an interesting one, isn't it, Matthew? And Michael Wood's not exactly the most popular person in the transport industry right now.
No, not really. I think it's. I thought in some ways it might have even been a little brave of him to appear. I respect him for attending that event. Just further to Russell Phillips's comments, he adds the minister was quoted as saying immigration will meet some needs of the skills shortage and the apprentice shortage. He also noted there has been a 50% increase in apprenticeships during the pandemic. The actual numbers are 50% ahead of pre-pandemic levels. There's a drop in the bucket, an even higher number of skills entered the country while borders were closed. NZ is also losing skills to Australia, and the projected changes to immigration policy, in my opinion, may further divert skills away from New Zealand to destinations perceived as easier to relocate to. And I think they've got a good point there. Australia is obviously going through a lot of the similar things that we're going through. We're both relatively isolated countries. But certainly, if you're overseas and you're looking at opportunities in this part of the world, I'm not 100% sure why you'd come here, even if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think generally the expectation is that we could bring in people from South Africa or Fiji. They certainly are motivated to come to New Zealand, but you just can't. And It seems like the changes they made to the structure just don't seem to be working for the trade. And the old argument goes, well, you can go and train a whole pile of new people, but you can't produce a highly skilled technician for a European vehicle overnight. Just does not work. So, yeah, who knows what he's thinking there. It was interesting. We had a journalist at the event. They did not allow questions, or at least there didn't seem to be many questions. And I wonder, welcome back, Graham. And I wonder if that's because they were a little bit scared around the discussions on the clean car standard. I am hearing rumours, because everyone knows I've been banging on in the magazine about them not having the standard yet. I'm hearing rumours we might finally get the regulations in the next 24 hours. Interesting if they do release it late on a Friday afternoon, because, well, that seems to be a great way to hide from the media, I guess. So who knows?
Before Labor Weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Drop the bomb and then go off to the batch. So who knows? We'll keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on AutoTalk for that one. Now, Auckland Mayor wants car imports off Bledisloe Wharf. New Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown has called on Ports of Auckland to repurpose one of its largest car import facilities into a public use facility. Brown's plea comes via a letter penned to Ports of Auckland Chair Jan Dawson. In the letter, Brown gives Dawson and the ports an ultimatum of less than 6 months to come up with a plan to free up the space. The likelihood of the ports playing ball? Maybe. I'm going to say something controversial here, is that the public don't really want that space. Because we, up until recently, the Auto Media Group headquarters were down right opposite Queen's Wharf. And that area was taken back over from the ports a while ago, was turned into lovely public space. No one uses it.
No.
It's cold and windy out on those wharves. No one uses it. I don't know what people are expecting it to be. But, yeah.
I think it's a classic case of, well, we just want it, but we don't know what we do to it, what we're going to do with it, how we're going to pay for it, but we want it, but we don't know what we're going to do with it, but we want it. And pragmatism seems to have gone out the window there.
Yeah. Looking at Wayne Brown's time up north and how much he spent actually working on his own and his mate's business interests rather than the region, whatever. I suspect he wants wharf space more so he can get some mates to put some apartments on it, but that's just my opinion. Yeah. Anyway, and of course,
wash your mouth out with soap.
And of course, we look at all the apartment developments that have gone down on the old railway land and Marion railway land down the waterfront. That doesn't go that well either. So, just
everyone knows they're just a hot ticket to fame and fortune right now, or so it would seem. Yeah, I would perhaps just take that line out of the media releases if I was him right about now. Timing is everything, as they say.
Yeah. Get in there and fix all the actual departments you have control over. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Yeah, exactly. And besides, if they put apartment buildings down there, all it's going to do is block the views of all his mates up in Parnell.
You're on this one this morning, Richard, aren't you?
Oh, I've just been debating Mr. Brown with another member of the industry, and it's
okay.
Yeah.
The whole ports dilemma, that's been going on for, I don't know how many decades now. This has been a one of those little ping pong balls. And it's a political ping pong ball. And I suspect deep down that most Aucklanders don't give a fat rat's pickle what happens to the wharf down there, whether it's got cars in it or not. They don't care. But there's a handful of combination of lovies and agitators and others out there that somehow think that because it's there, it should be theirs, with no thought given to what the consequences of that or what the alternatives might be. And I know it's a bit of a glib statement to make, but the reality is we have a working, functional port. It's an import port right in the middle of New Zealand's biggest city. And if you look at the distance, the things that we bring into that port, whether it's containers or cars, doesn't matter, cars are just a convenient booking buoy, the total distance they travel from where the ship drops them off to where the majority get used and complied and sorted out is minimal. Every time you push that out and you say, well, okay, now we're going to take them 200 Ks in that direction or 300 Ks in that direction because you want to, it actually just changes the whole dynamic of the process of a port, of what the port is there to do. Essentially, Mount Maunganui, we push stuff out. Auckland, we bring stuff in because that's where we use it. Mount Maunganui, it's close to the place we make the stuff. And I always thought it's a really simple process that we have in place. The port, I think, is a highly efficient one for the space that it works on. Look, most people that watch this show, you've been to ports or seen port facilities around the world. Auckland's a minnow by comparison, an absolute minnow. But the stuff it manages to bring in and work with and the speed at which it gets it out, I would say on a global standard basis is one of the best we have. And why are we trying to muck with that? To what end? Anyway,
if the council's worried about the port, they should worry more about things like, they aborted building the Strand Tunnel years ago. They were going to cut and shut a tunnel through there so the trucks could basically run straight from the port up onto the motorway without getting involved in city traffic. They, have looked at stuff around putting underground Quay Street and that kind of stuff, so you open up the access to what land we do have on the port better. I don't think the council should be panicking about pushing east into the port area when they still are working on Wynyard Quarter. They're still clearing that out and doing the development down there. One thing at a time. Let the port work for now. Personally, opinion. Anyway.
Agreed.
Now, on to New Zealand Post has launched the first of 60 electric vans. New Zealand Post has unveiled the first consignment of its 60 new electric Mercedes-Benz e-Vito panel vans to add to its fleet, a $20 million initiative reducing its carbon emissions. A lineup of 22 of the 60 new Mercedes-Benz e-Vito panel vans was displayed at New Zealand Post's Auckland Operations Centre in Highbrook. These will replace diesel and petrol vans used by NZ Post and some of its delivery partners for last mile delivery and helping achieve its target to reduce emissions by a third by 2030. What do you think of these vans, Matthew? They're pretty cool little units.
They are, and we've all driven electric vans at some point. They make a lot of sense from a comfort ergonomics situation. How much that sense they make from a sort of commercial fleet situation is probably still up for debate. The curious thing about these vans, and it's something that I know you and I have talked about, is the ANCAP situation and being tested.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
So, and Graham might find this interesting from someone's working something angle a point. So New Zealand Post has made a lot of hoo-ha over the last year or two about supporting their contractors to go electric. Yay, let's go electric. They got a pile of funding, I think both a mix of internal and outside funding, to provide funds to contractors to go electric. And the offer, I believe, was if you go and buy an electric van for your run, you get a $14,000 check. So a nice little enhancement just to cover off the difference between what you'd be doing getting a petrol van or a diesel van and an electric van. So up until now, there's really been only one or two options in the market in regards to electric vans, LDV or Renault. The LDVs have been reasonably popular, or becoming reasonably popular with the contractors, particularly it seems on the rural post and smaller contractors, the e-Deliver 3. Though I believe there's been a lot of interest in the e-Deliver 9, which, Graham, you want to give your 30-second summation of the e-Deliver 9? Good van?
I can do it in less than 30 seconds. I thought it was actually a bloody good van.
Yeah.
And I like my vans, and I thought that if you could just make sure the range was pushed out, we went for the model with the bigger range, and I don't know about affordability, it ticked a lot of boxes. It made sense.
Yeah. So we started getting messages through our fleet and transport channels from these contractors who are saying, pointing out that New Zealand Post had in their ads for electrification an LDV EV80, so the bigger, older version of the van, which is a bit of a mixed kettle of fish. It was okay, but it was a bit rough and ready. But they were saying they were going and ordering LDV electric vans, but being told by NZ Post they couldn't have the $14,000. New Zealand Post justification for that was that, sure, we said that, but now we've decided that your van needs to have a 4-star ANCAP rating before we will give you the money, which of course the LDVs don't, because generally ANCAP doesn't test vans. They've done a little bit of work around vans, but virtually none at all. And so they've been rejecting these buyers who have been going and picking up these vans. And the e-Deliver 9 it's got fairly decent safety features in it. But no worse than any other van, I think. The e-Deliver 3, I think, is a little more on the basic side. And having this money refused. Now, some of them are still going to head because a e-Vito is 120 grand or 110 grand, and a e-Deliver 3 starts at about 50. So there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And arguably the LDVs probably in some cases have more range, which I think is more helpful too. So we've been pushing New Zealand Post on this. The 4-star NCAP thing came out of the woodwork, and that's what they were saying is their justification. They won't say anything else. They won't say the LDVs are bad or whatever. We did some digging. At this stage, we believe, and actually an NZTA official has confirmed this to us, the e-Veto does not have an NCAP rating. The Veto has a 5-star NCAP rating, but it expires on December 1. Pretty much before any of these vehicles are actually going to be delivered to their owners. So the question is, why is NZ Post doing this? Is it part of the fact they've got a really good deal on the Mercedes? Do they really hate LDV? Have they had issues with the LDVs? Have they basically walked back on a really big promise to their contractors that involved, substantial sums of money in their own interests? It's a really interesting one. We're still trying to come to terms with it and work out what's actually gone wrong here. NZ Post have given us some incredibly political answers about it. I think they're trying to avoid actually saying what's wrong, and also I don't think they've been particularly understanding of what the actual situation is with ANCAP, which is concerning, seeing as they are a major fleet operator. But it's just a bit of a mess.
And to say one of the difficult parts about it is that, and look, we probably all know this, guys, that the courier sector, most of the guys and the girls that own those and run those vans, they're incredibly hardworking and they're not making a huge amount of money. I mean, every dollar counts in that sector. And you've got to balance up when it comes to running an EV, for example. They've got to really carefully balance up the extra purchase price of the electric or BEV van, even with an incentive versus a conventional diesel or a petrol van. Look, I know here in West Auckland, all my local couriers are all running diesel vans, and they tend to buy either near new ones or slightly less than near new, because they do get a bit of a yammering. But every last little dollar counts. And so when you're talking about incentivization, for a start, it still has to work. The incentive has to actually be big enough to justify that extra capital purchase cost that they then have to amortize over the case of their 2-year contract, because it's a really fine numbers game. But if you strip that out from them for whatever reason, that could be the difference between being in business or not. It's that black and white.
Yeah, and if you say that LDV E119 bigger with the 77 kilowatt battery, 72 kilowatt battery, that you drove to Wellington, right? Yep. So that car, by the time you take the clean car discount off it and you put that money from NZ Post in it, is about the same or cheaper than a high-ace jumbo. Not that you can get a high-ace jumbo at the moment. You're waiting till like middle of next year anyway, or late next year. So that is viable for someone. The Mercedes, even if it, they're going to do discounted leases on it, is a great van. And look, I'm not discounting the fact that it is a better van than the LDVs. I'll say that. It's a better van than the LDVs. But is it better enough to be basically twice the cost if you were to go buy one? And I'm sure the New Zealand Post buy price is lower, but it's still a substantially hop up for people who don't necessarily have a huge amount of capital. I gather the discussions going further too, and that a lot of rural post operators have been looking at the T60 EV, the Ute, for their operations, and I believe there's some discussion going on around the review rating on that. It's so complicated, a lot of this stuff, simply because that one is the cars that are here that are 5-star are ADR cars, the existing diesel ones. The electric one, I believe, is coming in at least initially as an ECE car, and technically there's questions over whether the rating transfers over. So we'll see.
Why do we just endlessly in this country make stuff so complicated? Why? We're just masters at it. And every single time I think, well, hang on a minute, we don't make these things. We're just takers of technology around the world, whether it's from Australia or technology and rules around the world. Yet we seem to want to then just put layer upon layer upon layer of our own needless bureaucracy upon stuff that somebody else has worked their way through to what you'd argue to say our advantage of being a taker is we can just cherry pick the stuff that works. Yet we just seem to have this knack in New Zealand of messing the whole thing up and making it needlessly complicated. Why do we do that? Another example of it.
I think things are actually relatively simple pull except when Australia gets involved. So you look, we take the example of the issue we've got at the moment with the BYDs. I mean, that's basically now EV Direct in Australia they've either fucked up or they've deliberately bent the system, one of the two. And that's caused massive issues over there around the fact that they've only got the one standard. We've got multiple standards. You can pick and choose what you want. At least from what I understand, it's not, NZ Post has kind of put their line on the ground on this. Speaking to the guys at NZ Post, they seem to be genuinely working to try and make these safety ratings cross over as much as they can. But, it's arguably an easier justification applying at the 5-star to the ute than it is stretching a 5-star out for the van beyond 7 years. That's a very old rating by that point, so who knows. Anyway, let's get on to the last topic of today, and it's one that we're going to do first, but we waited for Graham to come back to get his Coin Media internet sorted. And that is the full schedule, though subject to change, for AutoTalk Live. And we're going to run through this. This is November 11 in Auckland. Get your tickets now. This is a pretty full day, so it's going to take a minute or two, but we'll run through them and you guys can chip in if you like it. So we are starting in the morning with coffee and breakfast, of course. Good quality barista coffee from Havana, which is good. So that's great. You get yourself started. Then we have Simon Bridges. He's kicking off the morning, talking about a bit of his work in government and red tape that's facing businesses now. I'm sure he'll have a bit to say on that. We then jump into the kind of legendary now Deloitte Motor Industry Services benchmarks. That's Dale McCauley. He's coming across from Australia for that. That session, the Australian version, was held at AADA and apparently was just one of the standouts for the people I've spoken to. We're then doing the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap live. So you get to see us three up on stage trying to be funny and failing. I don't know. We then have a very important session. We then have a very important session with Phil Haynes, who is a very well-regarded industry consultant, does work for both the new and used car sides of the industry and spend a lot of time with a number of brands. He's going to break down the clean car standard and just help us kind of cheat sheet understand our way through it, and a lot, a bit of discussion about how you're going to price this in, all those kind of things. We then have more coffee and food because you've got to keep you fueled. We then have what I think is going to be, again, one of the standouts talks of the day, and we're proud to add this to the schedule at relatively the last minute. Google New Zealand market lead Rob Coyne will cover the modern car research journey and the role dealerships play. So everyone buys stuff through Google these days, and he's going to tell you how to kind of shortcut it. And then Mark Greenfield of Limelight will discuss the increasing importance of customer reviews, how to ask them, how to analyze them, and what to do when you get a bad one. We're going to have a panel with them. We have a bit of an interesting one, a new young buck, and I hope I get his name right. Ketis Hayes Vale of Redline Digital explains the marketing phenomenon that is TikTok, how we gathered millions of views for a dealership, and how it turns into sales. So that's going to be interesting. It's a bit of a real practical case study on social media and what you can do with it. He produced some really interesting short TikTok videos for Trust Motors. And yeah, they just went nuts, and he became a bit of a social media star overnight, and all from a dealership in South Auckland. It's pretty cool.
That's because he said lots and lots of naughty words.
Yes, and he's promised not to be sweary, but he probably will be.
I don't think swearing is really the problem, but anyway.
What is the problem, Matthew?
We'll keep going. We'll keep talking.
I think there was some interesting. I think there were some interesting takes on masculinity within those TikToks.
Yes,
there may have been some issues perhaps there, but that should be good. You know what? Exactly. And if you think back, sort of 4 or 5 years ago, we'd be talking about Eugene Williams and Too Cheap Cars and some of the material he was producing at that stage when Too Cheap was kind of its infancy, and the really controversial billboards and bits and pieces. And, we sort of sat back and you thought, but it sold cars, right?
Yep. We then have Todd Fuller from AdTalk Edge talking about selling cars online. That's been something pretty crucial over the COVID periods, and there's a lot of learnings you can take from that now. Taking money without even having to have someone walk onto the yard is a pretty big thing. And then Trade Me's Greg Cassidy will be talking about what you can learn from Trade Me data. I mean, a lot of people just list their cars, but there's a lot of tools there between them and AdTalk and others that can really help you analyze what's going on and how far you can take that. We are then going to have Lynn McMorrin of the Financial Services Federation. She's going to discuss what went wrong with Triple CFA, what changes have been made, and what dealers can learn from it all. Amos Banbury is up next. He's from One Partner or Better Finance. He spent years as a really well-known and really successful business manager at various yards, and he now is a broker working for dealerships, and he's going to talk about how you can get more approvals when it comes to finance, because that's some valuable advice at the moment. Then James Steele from AutoSure is going to talk about the value of protection, the role of protection. Where do protection products sit in the context of a changing automotive market, and why they should still be at the heart of your sales process. People are funding their purchases in so many different ways these days. So much interesting stuff going on, but it's still good money and to be made in warranties and other insurance products, and they mean a lot more than just that nice little commission check. They can make life a lot easier in the long run. We then have, and this is a really last minute inclusion too, just based on what we had with the minister, staffing your dealership, automotive industry recruitment expert Russell Phillips will discuss the current employment market, landing the best talent, and change to immigration rules that could make it harder to employ the right people. And then we are going to have a final session with Anthony McLean of Boost Auto, which he's going to put his thinking cap on and give some predictions for the automotive market in 2023. Done that as a column for the last couple of years in AutoTalk. Very interesting, very amusing, very thought-provoking. So that's going to be a really interesting one. And then you and I are going to close the diagram for a couple of minutes, just sum things up. And then we open the bar. And I'm looking forward to that, not for the drinking, but just for a really good networking session, a good catch-up, talk some bullshit, brag about a few things. Yeah, that's going to be a good bit. You looking forward to it, Graham?
Yeah, and can I get my 10 cents worth and say, you two are not dealers, so I can speak as a dealer here. You've just talked Dealer 101. If you're in a dealership at the moment, you're involved in a dealership, whether you're new franchise, whether you're used, doesn't matter what you do, that program on the day, Richard, is Dealership 101 from start to finish. I think that you're going to gain, if the ticket price was $3,000, you're going to gain information that you would never otherwise have within one day to enable you. And what, let's be honest right now, they're not easy times in the motor vehicle sector, and they're likely to not be easy for quite some time too. There's your toolbox. There's a couple of speakers in there that I'm actually really excited to hear. And if I'm excited about it, you should be too. I think there's some really good information going to come out of this day. If you could pay your ticket price just to hear the clean car standard unpacked, that to me is alone is worth the price of coming along. And there's an open bar, and there's good coffee. And one last two little points actually, and I've made these before. First of all, if you're involved in a dealership, there's not been a lot of really good stuff out there in the last couple of 3 years to go and take and celebrate with your team and say, you know what, we've made it through these tough times. We know that it's a bit difficult at the moment, but we're going to get better. This is a way of bringing your team on board to a really good event, a really good day. You can have a bit of time out, but you're still at the end of the point, you're with the industry, hearing good things and things to make things work better for your business. And bring your team. And this is not about necessarily just selling tickets. I think for your own benefit, bring your team. They will really get a lot out of this. And you as a dealer principal, if you're the person making those decisions, you're going to gain a lot out of this for your team's benefit too. The second point I was going to make was that it was down at Hostelville Point a couple of nights ago having dinner. Don't forget, so this location we're at is one of the small little jewels in West Auckland's crown. There's actually a ferry service which runs from the city with a ferry stop. The end of the ferry actually comes up to the wharf at Hobsonville Point. And so you can leave your cars or your Ubers in Auckland City, take the ferry out in the morning, have your cup of coffee on the ferry, and then you can be poured into the ferry at the end of the night after the open bar session, tumble off back to your public transport back in Auckland City. It's genius.
You can go further than that because they're sort of aligned. You can jump on the ferry at Devonport, at North Shore, at out East Auckland and Half Moon Bay, or even Beachlands, and just swap ferries when you get to the city. And we're going against the grain of the traffic, so there should be plenty of space in the ferries. Not sure if there's a bar on those ferries, It depends on which vessel they're running, but yeah,
There's an interesting point there, Richard.
should be
Maybe.
interesting. And yeah, look, I agree with you in regards to bringing the team. I know a couple of big dealerships seem to be, where I've worked with, looked at their tickets, they seem to be bringing along what they consider their up-and-coming sales staff and management staff. Kind of, get them interested, get them out there, get them networking. So that's pretty cool. So, all right.
Yep.
Awesome. Get out there and get your tickets. If you haven't already, we've got our wonderful business manager, Dale. She's getting around a few key people to call them and just finalise some details and say, why haven't you booked yet? We've seen you sniffing around. So if you get that call, don't forget, book those tickets. It is very, very value-based pricing. It's $2.99. If you, as I said, one day at AADA without food and beverages is like $800, $1,000 or something like that, and that's Australian, and you got to fly there. This is in West Auckland, so yeah. Anyway,
Sorry, we don't bite. We're good.
Exactly. Cool. Right. Thank you so much. That's Matthew Hansen and Graham McDonald. We'll catch everyone next week.
Happy trading.